When I go about writing a pilot, I feel like the starting point for me is obviously ideas. For me personally, I think it's a lot of personal experience. What am I dealing with? What's happening lately?
Well, usually it starts with like some sort of a world or a character or an idea or something that I'm drawn to that interests me or that maybe somehow resonates on to something that's gone on in my own life or that I've experienced myself. And then from there, I try to sort of build that out and try to figure out how can this sustain a show, how can we create a show engine around it.
Most of the process for me, it's just like hanging out and just thinking and just living it. And sometimes I've gotten in trouble where I've gotten in the car and I'm really submerged into the storyline that I forgot where I'm going, you know. So that's pretty dangerous. But I've actually crashed because I've been thinking about my characters too much.
I love those days when you finally get into it and it clicks, and before you know it, the day is over, and you've lived the entire day sort of in the story, pulling it together. I totally love that.
I meticulously write. I try to choose all the right words. I really try to picture the scene vividly as I'm going into it and describing it. And it makes for a bit of overwriting, but it's so much easier to actually have myself in the scene and really see every detail of it. And then later go back and take, you know, all those details out, or a lot of the details that, you know, make it more of a slog as you're reading it. You know, oh, I don't need this. I don't need him looking at her. Of course he's looking at her, you know. Stuff like that you see more in retrospect.
So it is very much an issue of like biggest to smallest. So I start by building out a concept doc, which is everything from like, I think this is the log line, you know, I think that these are the characters, I generally think this is the world. And I think for me, the most freeing lesson that I learned is that it doesn't have to be right the first time. It's all a work in progress. Like, I think especially when I was writing fiction, every word you put on the page was like, oh my gosh, what if this isn't the right word? And like, screw that, that's being way too precious.
I tend to really try to understand the whole show and the whole first 2 seasons before I even start thinking about the pilot idea.
Sometimes when I know that I'm creating a bigger world that I could just, you know, keep in my head, I do have grids. I divide my storylines. I do my character bios. I always carry a notebook around because like little moments or maybe something about a scene that I want to like just focus on, and I put that down. Just
to free write seems to me like it could be a big waste of time, and I don't have time to waste. So I want to, you know, hit that bullseye with the arrow, or as close to the bullseye as I can. First shot out, you know, first arrow out. And it seems the most effective and efficient way to do that is to outline, and then you see where your potholes are and you try to avoid them before you write yourself into that. And then once I get my outline, it's a pretty detailed outline, and I'm perfectly willing to deviate from it, because as you're in it, you know, the outline is the bird's eye view, but as you're in it, you're down now on the road in the trenches, and you discover other things. Oh, now this road is blocked, I gotta go around, or this isn't working, or there's traffic here. So you adapt, and you often find greatest little nuggets when you do that.
I try to usually work by myself for a while, and because I know that I'm the kind of person who writes and then goes over and over and over things, and it's sort of like a massaging. So I'll spend a lot of time alone first, and then when I feel like I have something I've done everything I can, that's when I float the draft to friends of mine who are writers or professional coverage people, and sort of survey the room there. And then when I adjusted the notes that I got from them, that's when I usually take it to my reps.
I work towards deadlines. I have a couple of people waiting for professional people that do script coverage that usually have given me a date. They're like, hey, you know, send it to me by a certain date. So I work towards those deadlines, because I think otherwise I probably would work on a script forever. But so the first thing I do is send it to a proofreader. because by that time, my eyes and my mind, it's so tired that I'm not looking for typos. So the proofreader takes it, proofreads it, sends it back, I correct it, and then I send it to the person for script coverage. And then those were my couple of days to just take a break and hang out and just sort of like, whew, I did it. And then I come back and then I check out the notes, talk to people. But at this time, I probably have sent it to a couple more people, so I'm waiting for their notes as well.
I find notes very important. And the reason I know they're important is because I read a lot of people's things and I give them notes, and I often see them bristle at the notes that I or other people give a writer. I always know that my note's a good note, so why are they being so obstinate to it? And so when I turn it around and I think about me getting notes, I think, well, I'm sure the person giving me these notes finds them to be really important, and maybe I shouldn't bristle at it.
I think probably one of the most delightful times, and it's like writing the last 10 pages. You know, the first 10 pages is the hardest, especially for me in drama, setting up that act one. And the last 10 pages are just wonderful. It's like lots of joy. You know, even though you know you're going to rewrite it like 4 or 5 times, it's a lot of joy.
You finish one thing, you send it out there, you start the next thing, because the last thing you want is sitting by that phone, watching YouTube, playing solitaire on the computer, sitting by that phone, waiting for someone to call you about that thing you finished 10 months ago. You could have written another script by then. You could have written a TV pilot by then. So just never give up and keep on going.
Love it.
That's it.